Yeah. Yeah. Good idea. I'll just put some in my bag, then I have them when we get here. I'll remember that. That's a good idea.
Ready to go?
Sure thing.
7 o'clock, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ask everyone to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Jim Dombeck.
Here.
Steve Nelson.
Here.
James Shiloh.
Here.
Julian Davey. Here. Jeff Jacobson.
Here.
Eric Jones.
Present.
Kristen Wren. Here. Quorum's present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call?
Wren.
Yes.
Shiloh.
Yes.
Davey.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Dombeck.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Audience to visitors. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to address the board? Ask you to come forward to the microphone here, stage right. You can, yeah, it's probably best for you to form a line so you could be the next in line and come up. If you would state your name and address, and if you limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
My name is Chris Fioretto. I live at 40 West Prairie Field Avenue in Cortland. I have 2 students in the Sycamore School District. One is a junior in high school, one is in 3rd grade. I want to pass on some experiences that I've had over the past week. I've reached out to one of the board members through Facebook Messenger. While my high school junior is getting by, she is struggling. My concern is my 3rd grader. It is my opinion that the elementary school students need to be back in-person schooling, or at least have that option. And the reasons are, there's not enough content to keep the little ones engaged. There's a lot of, my son meets for a half hour at 9 o'clock with his teacher, then at 10:30, then he's got his pod meeting at 12, and then he's got a 5-minute checkout time at the end of the day. In between there are assignments. Some of them are online, some of them are not. Over the course of the past week and one day, there have been multiple assignments that my son has had to do that are supposed to be online, that we go to log him in, and it's either content not available or it's not in his Google Classroom. And it's getting very frustrating because this is setting the pace for the next 9 weeks while they're doing this remote learning. Sorry, I got to pull the rest of this up. There's a lot of parental guidance that is needed. My wife and I both work. Due to my work schedule, there's literally one day a week that my daughter needs to help out. My wife was able to change his schedule or her schedule, but there's a lot of parental guidance that my son needs to get him through his day. Sitting in front of the computer for my daughter, she's getting a lot of headaches because being in high school, she's got a lot of work, and she's getting headaches from sitting in front of the computer throughout the day. And then some of her homework assignments, she's got until 10 a.m. to turn those in. To me, that's unacceptable to have a high school student or a school student have to turn in a school assignment at 10 or have it turned in by 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. I'm sorry. Teachers are using whiteboards for my son, and when they're writing on the whiteboard, it's showing in reverse on the screen, which is confusing my son because everything is backwards. I don't know how to fix that because she's trying. My son's teacher is trying her best. She has reached out to the parents, but it's a struggle. And it's very frustrating for the parents who see their kids trying to do something and then lose focus and they're not engaged in it because there's not enough content. To me, we need to do something. I feel the school district as a whole needs to be back in-person schooling. I am no more concerned about this threat than I am any other threat throughout the school district. I've been working through this since January. I am a first responder. I'm a career firefighter. I am no more concerned about this than any other threat. These kids need to be back in school, all of them. At a minimum, the little ones need to be back because they need the in-person personal contact. It's just very frustrating as a parent to see my son struggle and to see my daughter come out and be very frustrated.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Angie Carter, and I live on Hamilton Drive in Sycamore. This is my 20th year of having children in the Sycamore schools. It's also my final year, as I have 3 very diverse seniors graduating this year. In those 20 years, my husband Jeff and I have had many experiences with Sycamore staff and families, some incredibly positive, and others disappointing and frustrating, just like most families with 4 kids ranging with needs. But through all of that, we have always felt heard, validated, and able to work out a plan to positively move forward. I'm also a person to appreciate successes, no matter how big or small, and I've tried over the years to share my appreciation of the teachers and staff for the many joys. I'm a positive thinker, and I've sat patiently over the past 3 months listening and allowing matters to fall where they may and to give this school year a chance, and I still do. But this meeting fell only a week into the school year, and from my observation over the past week, I can't stop by and let the school year begin and get away from us, from you, from the parents that are trying their absolute hardest to balance, and from the parents that emotionally or cognitively cannot support their children in this way. We can't let this get away from the teachers that are exhausted and not adequately supported, or so frustrated that they don't want to learn any more new concepts, or get away from our students. The students ranging from early childhood to seniors. And I'm sad and frustrated that the small population of 3 to 5-year-olds that with needs are not only in classrooms. It's outrageous, but that's another discussion. Getting away from the students that sit at their desks daily, fighting with their fidgety fingers, or watching to see if that spot on the wall will move from the earlier part of the day to a later part of the day. And figuring out if their next class is going to be live or recorded. And I'll tell you, not many students use the word synchronous or asynchronous. Just sitting around waiting throughout the day. My children each have different experiences over the past week, and I'll share those in a private email. But the one thing that was consistent was the word lonely. All 3 of my children used the word loneliness, and I will use the word isolation. I have one of those children that does not like school, and now he can't wait until he can go to a small group welding class. He wants to go to school. I'm looking forward to the consistency and routine and whatever that may be, and I totally understand that a week is not an adequate amount of time to see that. I really do. I've struggled greatly with whether to even talk tonight and what to say, but there are 4 things that I would like to also add to this. I'm very concerned about the mental health of all of these children in our district, the parents and the teachers. But I am sincerely afraid that the mental health needs of our children are not going to be addressed until it's too late. Number 2, I have no concept of the magnitude of the challenges that you and the teachers and staff are facing. But how about maybe asking the parents for help? We're here to help. Many have offered to be in committees. Some have experience in remote learning and on various levels. The senior class parents have already held a senior sunrise and breakfast where social distancing was followed, and we had happy students that followed the rules. Let us help you, let us help your staff, and let's work together to boost morale. Number 3, our middle and high school students' education and mental health really not worth $1 million? How about maybe 50,000 if they could look forward to going back and having a final hybrid semester to get what they need? How are other schools doing this now? What is the plan to get elementary students back at the end of 9 weeks? How many students have or will drop out this year compared to others? And my last thing is, parents, teachers, and community members need validated. I've watched every board meeting this summer. I've heard many people talk about this. People talk at meetings, and then I feel that most everything that they've said seems ignored. There's no dialogue. Even a follow-up meeting or email the next day, or some answers to questions addressed at the next meeting, or do this afterwards. I realize there's an agenda and everyone is extremely busy, but if you'd like to build the relationship and trust in your community, dialogue and validation could go a long way right now. Thanks for your time. I know you're working hard.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good evening. My name is Julia Dwyer, and I live at 1044 Park Avenue. I have 3 kids. One of them is with me today. He's autistic, nonverbal, and he's receiving essentially the same education as my 3rd grader and my 8th grader. I'm here to talk about the special needs kids. I'm not going to talk about the other kids, although I agree with the gentleman that spoke first that thinks especially the little kids need to be in school. I'm here because this small population of special needs kids are being failed utterly by our school district. I am not the only parent that feels this way. There's a lot of other parents that wanted to come that couldn't because they're exhausted, they're stressed out, their kids are having meltdowns, they couldn't come. They're trying to make up their work hours because, they have full-time jobs. Our children have a right and deserve individualized and ambitious IEP plans. These IEPs should be implemented to the greatest extent possible according to the Illinois State Board of Education. I'm a litigation paralegal. I don't have a special education background. I don't have a degree in education. But yet, my son is being offered an education that I'm receiving, and then I'm supposed to somehow turn around and figure out how to get it to him. The administrators, the teachers are doing the best they can. I understand that. The administrators, when I speak to them, are asking me, well, what do you need? Well, when you need something, tell me what it is. You know what? I don't know what I need. I've never done this before. I don't have the degree, but my tax dollars pay these people with degrees to be in the position to do this. After 7 months of this, he's in no better position than he was in March. He's not being helped to prepare for regular school. He's got the most restrictive environment possible. I'd also like to question the idea of the Oscar program being open to district employees. As a parent that works, I get it's really hard, but why are they in such a better position than every other parent in the community to have daycare available that can facilitate this learning? My son is supposed to have a paraprofessional assigned to him all the time because of his behavioral issues. Where is she? The Illinois State Board of Education has suggested that these paraprofessionals perhaps meet with these children in school, in a setting, and help facilitate the virtual learning that the teacher is trying to put out there. Because I can't do it. And it's affecting my other children that are in the exact same space with this little guy. You hear just a little bit at him making noise. I'd love to tell him to be quiet. He can't talk. He's not getting speech therapy or occupational therapy. And what he is getting is 2.5 hours a day of me sitting on the computer screen, low light. It's less engaging than any YouTube video that any 4-year-old watches. I could hold his head at the screen. It's not going to do any good. He's running around screaming, having meltdowns. You don't understand what it could be like. And I brought him with me because you guys need to see these kids. They're here and they need your help, and they're relying on you guys to make decisions that are going to be in their best interests. And the parents are relying on you guys as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Brian Burke. I live at 1044 Park Avenue, and I would like to share my experience with the changes to this year's school district from a different perspective, not as a parent that works at a home, but a parent that has to go to work. I was not fortunate enough as my significant other to be able to change her work schedule, which is only temporary. We're concerned on a daily level that she's going to lose her position or her job due to the time that she has taken away from her regular job to facilitate our homeschooling environment, which is done in a house that is not big enough to support that. We're not in a position to make a change of that nature, nor do we have time to do so. We both work to be able to afford to be in Sycamore schools and Sycamore School District, and that is preventing us from making the impact we need with our children. There's 3 children in the same household. 2 of them share a bedroom. Where are they supposed to homeschool? In the kitchen, in the living room? She's also expected to work a full day from home, as well as facilitating homeschooling to a special needs child and 2 other children. It has been the worst thing I have ever had to go through, watching her struggle on a daily basis, every single day from the 5 in the morning till midnight. It all revolves around these children and trying to give them somewhat of what they need. And if he is supposed to be assigned an IEP or an assistant to be with him on a daily basis, then why isn't there some other option for special needs children to get them that help, whether it's in home, in school, or whatever? It's ridiculous, and we need immediate response, not later. The damage is being done. He's going to be 5 years old. He doesn't speak, and he will speak, but when he does and when things progress is up to you guys. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Allison Harris, and I'm a Sycamore resident and mother to 4 young children. I'm here tonight on behalf of our elementary students. Mr. Wilder, like you, I didn't grow up here. My husband and I moved here 11 years ago because we loved this small town community that reminded me of my own childhood. Sycamore's reputation of having great schools was enough to make us want to put down roots and raise our own family here. We now have 2 third graders and a kindergartner in this district. And I'm here tonight to tell you that for our elementary students, remote learning is not sustainable. This is not how young children learn, and it's already taking a toll on their mental and emotional well-being. As a parent, a taxpayer, a PTO board member, and a friend to several of you in front of me, I'm asking you to find a way to get our K-5 students back into the classroom when our 9 weeks are up. I've listened to every minute of these meetings since July, and I understand that our middle school and our high school have more logistical and financial obstacles. While my heart breaks for those older students, let me also remind you that they don't need a grown-up to tie their shoes, to pour their milk, or to put their hair in a ponytail when it gets tangled in their headphones. My children do, because they are young. Do you remember what it's like to be 5? Our elementary students haven't learned how to correctly hold a pencil, how to write in cursive, how to stand still while waiting in line. These basic life skills cannot be learned by staring at a screen for 300 minutes a day. Let me be clear, our teachers are phenomenal, and they are giving it their all and then some. They're sacrificing their evenings with their own children. They're lying awake at night with worry about whether they're doing enough. But no matter what those teachers do, the responsibility and the follow-through now falls on the families. I've seen my kids engaged in synchronous morning meetings because they're excited to see their peers and their teacher. By mid-morning, they're struggling to focus, and by the end of the afternoon call, they've shut down. At this point, we've barely tackled any assignments or new content, all of which require more screen time. So we've had tears of frustration every single day. It's extremely difficult to see schools all around us making an in-person schedule work. Elementary students in Genoa, Geneva, Hinckley Big Rock, Canelan, Oregon, Rochelle, Sandwich, all have in-person learning, yet they're following the exact same IDPH guidelines. How is that possible? How have we interpreted those guidelines so differently? And what do we need to do to get there? Is it signing a waiver? Is it daily self-certification? Is it temperature checks? Because we will do that. We will gladly do that. Back in July, Dr. Webster told us that we need to be nimble, and I'm prepared to put on a happy face for my kids every morning and make the best of these 9 weeks. But I can't sit back and stay silent while my kids struggle because of a decision that you made for my family. You say that we are empowering all learners to succeed in their world, but for our K-5 students, this is not the way. Our elementary students need to be back in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to address the board? Okay, then we'll move on. Communications, correspondence, informational items, letters, newsletters. There were those. FOIA requests, there are none. Is that correct?
Correct.
Committee reports. No committee reports either. Okay. Superintendent's report.
Good evening. Start my portion of the evening with some of the things that we start with every time. Our mission, empowering all learners to succeed in their world, to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Our core values are honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, equality, empathy, respect, citizenship, digital citizenship, responsibility, and collaboration. In some of the questions that our professional learning communities ask themselves and discuss, what do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How will we know if they have learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? And I'm going to start my portion of the meeting by actually turning things over to Mr. Reineck. The Return to Learning update, we're going to start with just an update for the board on professional development and recognizing some staff. So, Mr. Reineck.
As Mr. Wilder said, we want to take an opportunity to recognize staff. Many are here. It took nearly 70 staff planning professional development leading up to the start, but then as we had extended that calendar date or that start date as well, we had to add to the PD. So it took everyone. Teachers had to learn to teach a different way outside of that emergency from the spring. Students had to learn to learn a different way. This was broken down into several different groups, and we will address each of those here. So staff, as you see your group up here, I ask that you walk to the south side, come down. In this COVID world with social distancing, normally Mr. Dombeck would meet you and put the medal around your neck. We're just going to ask that you grab one off the front table there. So our first group was our social emotional learning group, and I will go into the details of what this PD looked like later on, but we want to recognize staff first. So our social emotional learning group, we knew the importance of supporting our staff as they came back into this world, and we'll talk more about that later on in my presentation. But the group that made this up, counselors, social workers, and other various positions, Crystal Templin, Mary Ellen Spicer, Kimberly Duncan, Mary Grimes, Jackie Kirchman, Jen Cam, Wendy Bolteis, Mary Gentile, Elizabeth Blevins, Elizabeth Horkler, Ashley Panazzo, Yvonne Morangello, Christy Miklas, Christy Ricker, Sarah Ward, and Nan Phillips. And this group created a video, worked with our communications department, and created a video that went out to all our staff coming back. Throughout this PD, we broke it down. So Dr. Webster really took over the K-8 piece of it. And then myself and Mike Rice took over the 9-12 piece. So you'll see these groups broken up. So more instructional here, K-8, anytime, anywhere. Group, Brooke Wright, Liz Curlin, Aaron Mole, Jen McCormick, Justin Hames, Kyla Huber, Michael Buckner, Jalene Dennis, Sarah Alexander, Roxanne Horton, Chris Webster, Lynn Riley, Sarah Frankowitz, and Christy Crawford. And one thing you'll notice is you'll see some of these names appear on multiple of these groups, so they were heavily involved in this PD. Our next group is our IASA Build a Unit, and Dr. Webster will speak more to this. This was something that came with that 1-week extension, and she'll speak to what that model is. But we had teachers at every single level. So our elementary group was Jen McCormick, Lisa Winters, Nicole Ziegler, Jackie Clavin, Diane Wesley, Natalie Brooks, Emily Sullivan, Molly Tucker, Jen Parsons, Christy Ricker, Mary Beth Foose, Chris Webster, and Kelsey Bolts. And again, Dr. Webster will speak more to the specifics of this, but I believe the training alone was 3 days, and then they put it into practice that following week, working with staff that did not go through the training. The same training, but our middle school group was Kevin Bolts, Gene Flaherty, Justin Hames, Pam Nelson, Jen Tequila, and Colleen Krybrink. And then our high school group, again, the IESA Build a Unit, Kara Pointer, Annette Keka, Joe Ryan, and Beth Fitzenreiter. Our 9-12 anytime, anywhere. So this was specific to instruction again. There will be a Canvas piece with 9-12 where elementary was more classroom. So we'll speak to that a little bit as well. But Molly Momenteller, Sarah Turner, Phoebe Ballantyne, Sydney Zune, Mark Holstein, Beth Fitzenreiter, Barb White, Annette Keka, and Mike Rice. Then our last group are building administrators. So that last week, our building administrators provided training on safety, made themselves available for question and answers, talked about eval system as well. Thomas Franks, Ryan Janish, Christy Crawford, Craig Wesley, Ryan Schrader, Jim Clavin, Sarah Frankowitz, Justin Drennan, Tim Carlson, Mike Rice, Steve Balster, and Chauncey Carey. We're going to save the medals for others, I think. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nick. Once again, just want to thank all the staff who participated in the professional development, not only crafting it, writing it, putting it all together, but all the staff that participated in well. It was, in my opinion, a game changer in getting us ready for this past week, especially the week prior to school starting. It was a matter of staff working together and sharing ideas and collaborating that made it all happen. So week one is in the books. Just want to talk a little bit about week one. In some ways, it exceeded at least my personal expectations. That doesn't mean, if you look a little bit farther down, that it wasn't without its challenges, and I'll talk about some of the positives and the challenges. I really felt like teachers were prepared and organized. Received several comments about this, especially that last week before school. Things really seemed to start to come together, to gel, as teachers had a chance to get together and collaborate. This was a big point that was raised in the weeks leading up to school starting, was just having enough support to get started. And really it was the teachers primarily who put it all together and made it happen. So the professional development really made a big difference. One of the things I recognized is that teachers took a lot of risks and leaps of faith. This was new to many of them, and this comment's been brought up many times over the last couple of weeks. This is a new way of doing things for staff as well as for students. So kudos for the teachers in terms of taking those risks, trying something new and putting it all together. I think the students benefited from that. One of the comments I heard pretty regularly last week is that in a lot of ways, teachers felt like they were a first-year teacher again. And in some ways, that was challenging. You know, that first year of teaching, you're putting things together for the first time. You're trying to grab and steal and beg, borrow, and steal as best you can. At the same time, one of the comments that I heard was that it was kind of reinvigorating. You were looking at education in a different light, in the instructional strategies and pedagogy in different ways than they had before. So in a lot of ways, it really was a positive week. I know that there were challenges to that. I have students at home as well, and I know it wasn't easy, but I just heard a lot of positive comments. But it wasn't without its challenges. In particular, technology was a challenge, still is. Not that we didn't know that was going to be a challenge. We've ordered more mobile hotspots for families that have requested them. We've given out as many as we can. We're working with a local tech partner to get those last mobile hotspots. That order's been placed already. Now it's just a matter of those hotspots coming in. Tech support has been very busy. As you know, that we're making use of absolutely every device that we can in the school district. All of those devices are out, but as you can imagine, some of them are older and not working as well as we would like them to. So tech support has been very busy this last week. And it was, as has been referenced tonight as well as in the past, this was new to students and parents and guardians too. And speaking personally, I know that our two children at home and my wife, it's been a challenge. You know, they're learning something new, and the comments I think that were made tonight, very valid. It's new, so there's a learning curve to that, and we recognize that, and we'll continue to work to make it better for students as much as we can. Committed to bringing students to school as fast as we can, as safely as we can. So in the meantime, while we're under remote learning, we'll continue to improve upon it, and I know that in many ways it improved as we went through the week last week. Last week, the primary focus was really reconnecting with students, rebuilding those relationships, although it's not the same as being face-to-face in classrooms, physically present with each other. The focus was on reconnecting with students, and sometimes connecting with students who are new to the district. It's very difficult to do that, start all this under remote when you're new to the district. But that was one of the things that we felt was really important, especially from a social, emotional standpoint, was reconnecting, rebuilding those relationships with students, getting to know them again, and welcoming them to the new school year. Academic content will increase based on the grade level and the developmental level of the classroom. So in high school, a lot of that academic content started to get rolled out late last week, and as well as this week. Older students who are more mature, they can handle that academic content a little quicker. Reconnecting was just as important, but it happened a little bit faster than it did with some of the younger students. So as that goes on, there will still be challenges. We'll work through those. We encourage parents and students to contact teachers if they have questions. We'll do our best to work through those things. And we recognize that this is not a perfect or an ideal environment. But I think in a lot of ways, it truly did exceed my expectations, and it's worked better than I thought it was going to. Still a lot of things to work on, and we will continue to do that. Student engagement was one of the questions that I had going into the beginning of the school year. Were students going to check in? Were they going to be marked attendant? Were they going to show up, so to speak? And I'm glad to report that most of the schools reported anywhere from a 97 to a 100% present rate. We did have some reporting issues kind of throughout the district that skewed the numbers a little bit, but when we kind of adjusted for that, the attendance rate was very positive, 97 to 100% present. I received several emails from parents last week as well as even over the weekend, letting me know that although it wasn't ideal, parents recognized that it was a challenge. It was nice for students to be able to connect with teachers virtually. In some cases, in the elementary school, they actually set up times where students could connect with their teachers face-to-face, again, with face masks, socially distancing. But the engagement level, although, again, not ideal across the district, was better than I thought it was going to be. I want to say thank you to all the staff and the parents and child care providers that made that happen. I know that there were child care providers who structured time in their daycare to allow students to log on and access the internet, kind of help them through logging on and some of the issues. That certainly was not expected of them. And I know it didn't happen at every daycare facility or daycare provider, but I know it happened at a lot of them. So I want to include them as well. Thank you to staff, parents, and child care providers. One of the topics that was brought up tonight was special education, and we recognize that that is extremely important. All of our students are important to us, and every student is different and comes with different challenges and different strengths. We were able to start our ABLE and life skill programs today. Those are programs that support our what ISB, the State Board of Education, would describe as our most vulnerable students. Those are the students that need the most support. We recognize that we'd like to bring all of our students back, but this is truly the population that needed the most support. And it allowed us to bring those students back today for the first time and start to work through some of those safety protocols and see how they worked in person, but also provide the support that those students needed. It was very positive feedback. I was not able to get out today, but I know that Mr. Reineck did and visited a lot of those classrooms. And it was new routines for students, making sure they had masks on and socially distancing. But very positive feedback today. And again, this will allow us to practice those safety guidelines as we're bringing back more students, whether we do that in phases or ultimately one big jump to a hybrid model, as we've discussed before, as a possibility. We're working through some of those things and making sure that we can live up to those IDPH guidelines. The instructional model metric that we discussed at the last meeting, we've tweaked that a little bit. I need to work with the administrators to finalize some of the protocols from a scheduling and a logistics standpoint. My goal is to have all of that worked out so that we can provide that metric to the board on September 22nd, along with an update in terms of where we're at in what the next step might be for our students and bringing students back to school, whether that's a hybrid, a full return, having to continue to live in a remote environment. Whatever that case may be, that's part of the discussion and part of my presentation that will happen on September 22nd. A couple of last points have to do with the lunch program and transportation, and really these are areas where Mrs. Stuckert is a little bit more involved than I am, so I'm going to turn it over to her for these last two bullet points.
Thanks, Steve. So after dragging their feet for months and months, the USDA finally extended their waiver for the summer seamless lunch program. So what that means is we're able to serve all students up to age 18 that live within the Sycamore School District, so they don't necessarily have to be students attending our school yet. And we're able to serve them meals for free. So we were able to do this in March, and then we didn't have the program over the summer, but now they've extended this through the end, at least through the end of this year. So what that means is parents or guardians are actually able to come and pick up these meals. The students don't have to come do it themselves. We just do a tally count instead of having to enter in their student ID numbers, and then we're able to be reimbursed as part of the program as well. Currently, we are delivering these meals to our students because this would be an open site. We would also have a drive-through model like we did in the spring. So we're working out the logistics of that, but that's going to start next Monday. So we'll be sending out an email to families again so they can sign up for this model. As far as transportation goes, we're keeping our drivers very busy. They are delivering these meals twice a week now. And then they also are delivering materials to our students. And also today we started transporting our ABLE and Life students. We have 17 students that we're transporting. And I will tell you that it felt pretty normal this morning when I saw some of our buses driving around town. So we're excited to get those students back into the classrooms.
If we could, I'm going to pause there for just a second. Were there any questions? I covered a lot of ground, but I wanted to give the board an update on how the first week went, and then we're going to spend some time talking about the professional development in more detail. But are there any questions about the return to learn plan or the first week?
Steve, are you able to comment on, I know I'd asked a lot of questions about technology in the previous meetings. I personally didn't hear about any stories of anything imploding in the system, but are you able to comment on what the expectations were and what the reality was?
In terms of the network, the infrastructure?
Correct.
Sure. Talked with Roxanne Horton about that several times. She's kept a close eye on it with Ed Hollander. We're functioning somewhere between 15 and 50% of our bandwidth capacity. So they're monitoring that for spikes and usages, and when it spikes, we're getting close to that 40 to 50%. By and large, we're operating more in that 15 to 25% range. So plenty of room in terms of bandwidth and access for students and staff.
And so the plan for the September 22nd meeting is to have a kind of our expectations at this point in time of what the actual return to a classroom environment might look like. Would that also include some observations from what you guys are hearing from those other school districts that were identified earlier that are still?
Yeah, open? Sure, we can do that. And one of the things that I'd like to do is talk about what those different models will look like, what we've learned over our first couple of weeks, as well as what we've learned from other school districts. I've had several emails asking, about how other districts are doing it and why we're not doing it the exact same way. It's a really good question. Every school district's in a little bit different situation in terms of the interpretation of some of the rules and guidelines, but also facilities and what they're able to accommodate. Student body size, smaller districts, it's a little bit easier for them, particularly if they have the space. Larger districts, it gets a little bit more complicated. But one of the things we'll do is talk about those models, what we think they would look like now that we've been in school a little bit, at least remotely, and then also some options for the board moving forward and what a return to learning might look, as well as a timeline. Sure. So yeah, we'll include those things on the 22nd.
And there have definitely been no shortages of comments from the public as far as wanting to get kids back in the classroom, and I appreciate that we're only 1 week in at the time of this meeting, and it's focus has been on elsewhere on making sure that at least that first week has gone well. So I'd appreciate hearing that update on the 22nd.
Sure.
And I think going along with that is that you had mentioned that we're going to talk a little bit more about the model that was presented the last time that we met. So obviously there could be a more data-driven conversation the next time we meet in 2 weeks. If we're reaching out to other districts, is there a way to get information in regards to their specific cases in the school, how they've handled those, and compile that part of the data as well? And it's one thing to hear how they're actually going about doing it, but how are they also addressing the issue at hand as well? I think that would be something I'd be interested in hearing. If there's any way for them to share that, what they're sharing, what's public knowledge, I'm not 100% sure. So
sure. I think that's a really good point, and we're fortunate to have a good network of schools in this area who all communicate. While I'm new to the area, there are a lot of staff that aren't, so they have those connections, and we've been in touch with those school districts for the last several weeks, but specifically as they've gotten school year started, if they're in person at all, what does that look like? Have there been positive cases? If so, how many? How have they handled them? Each one of them is a little unique, a lot of communication with the health department, but we can absolutely share some of that information on the 22nd.
Thanks.
Steve, you talked about continuing to improve on our remote learning, and I'm just wondering what the structure is for that. Is there are items being shared with you and or is it random? Like some teachers are just, a parent tonight talked about the level of content not being enough. And I just wonder, is there a punch list? So that things like that are being addressed, or is it not so structured?
I would say that there's not a punch list. I don't have a form with check boxes or anything like that. There's not a punch list. But that sort of feedback is very regular. I thought I certainly appreciate the comment that there's not enough content. I can tell you that I'm receiving emails that there's too much content, and parents are struggling to get through what they're given. And I think that speaks to the individual nature of education and the fact that every student comes from a different place and every student comes from a different home. So, one of the challenges that we faced for many weeks, for many months now, is that it's going to look different for every student, for every family. And in the last 10 days, I've probably gotten the same number of emails thanking us for what we're doing and telling me that it's working great for their family, and the same number of emails that are telling me that it's just been a challenge every day, and echoing some of the comments that we heard here tonight. So I wouldn't say a punch list, but those are things that are regularly being talked about at every level, elementary, middle school, and high school.
I just wanted to say that I literally ran into a middle school teacher who was very positive about the week before school started, having the teachers do the professional development, which I'm sure you're going to be talking about, and how it really made her feel much more prepared to face the kids coming the next week, and that had they not had those days to do that, it would have not been as good. She felt their teams over there were much more cohesive and they were all going in the same direction, which made me feel like the decisions made were very positive and very good. So I'm anxious to hear about the professional development, so thank you.
And I would just add, servicing a number of school districts in a variety of counties, a lot of it has to do with what the local Department of Health is or is not choosing to enforce. And the farther west and south you go, the less enforcement you will see on the guidelines. I've spoken to a number of districts that are either hybrid or in full 5-day in person. They're all smaller districts, but their health departments are not necessarily following the state guidelines. I would just throw that out there. And then on the model metric, will the cases per 100,000 be addressed in the updated one? We'll see a change in that modal piece.
Yes, and I don't know. Yes, it will be addressed. That's a question that I've posed to the health department here. Just a little bit more feedback on the data and the numbers that we've put together. I don't know that that's going to change at all. I'm still waiting to get that feedback from the health department. But certainly want to take a look at that and make sure that we have a metric that's reasonable, looking at it both ways, that's reasonably safe, but that also is reasonable in terms of getting students back to school safely. So I can't promise you that it's going to change right now, but I can tell you that that question has been posed to the health department, and we're just waiting for some feedback on that. I don't know that we'll get any official guidance on that because that's not something that's been issued by IDPH, but just some feedback on what those numbers look like, too high, too low, right where they need to be, that sort of thing.
Just seems like the two areas continue to be at conflict with each other, that they can't possibly meet both. So it's either one or the other.
Yeah.
Steve, are you able to further comment on what the first week has been like from a special education standpoint as far as our ability to meet the IEPs that have been laid out? And I know last time we spoke, the team was looking at how are we going to implement those various plans for all the students in the district in a remote environment. Do you have any feedback at this point on what those accommodations look like and how successful we intend to be as a district or can be in a remote learning environment? And then the second part of that would be, as part of the September 22nd meeting, is the district able at that point to provide us with some guidance on whether those students are going to be constricted to the same kind of 9-week remote learning expectation that we have now, or if there's going to be some way to start phasing in the ones whose IEPs aren't being appropriately met right now at an earlier time?
I'll answer the second question first, and the answer to that is absolutely yes. That will be part of the conversation is we'll talk about those different models, but we will specifically focus on special education students and their needs and the extent to which we think we're going to be able to meet those needs remotely or through a hybrid or a full face-to-face return, absolutely. It's going to look a little bit different based on the needs of those students. I've never worked directly in special education, but worked with a lot of great special education administrators and staff, and they always tell me they call them individualized education plans for a reason, because every student comes with different needs. However, we recognize that those students all have a need or a variety of needs, and we'll do our best to meet those. So that will be part of the presentation on the 22nd. We'll talk about that. We've developed individual remote learning plans for all of our special education students. To the best of my knowledge, there may be one or two possibly that we're still finalizing, but the goal was to have those all done by last Friday so that the week before actually, so that we were ready to go on this first week. There are challenges because we just simply will struggle, all school districts will struggle to meet those needs, whether in a remote environment or a hybrid environment, because in many cases, those students need services that are provided every day or 5 days a week. And until we get back to a full return, we are still going to struggle to meet all of the needs of all of those special education students. We're coming up with creative ways to meet needs. Some of that is virtual. I did have a conversation with Lynn Riley this afternoon about, with some of our students who have the highest need, trying to create time in a socially distanced way, face masks, with face masks where some of our support staff, for example, a social worker, might be able to meet with the student outside, whether it's at school, at a public place like a park, those sorts of situations, because we're just, again, I think the point made earlier tonight was very legitimate. Some of those students have needs that are just very difficult to meet virtually. So we're talking about some of those things. I don't know that we're going to be implementing those immediately, but just trying to come up with ways to meet those needs and again, be as creative as we can. That's one of the reasons I can't wait to get students back in school is because those needs in specific are best met in a face-to-face environment. So long answer to your question, we're not able to meet all those needs. I'm not sure that any district can until they bring all the students back face-to-face every day.
I don't mean to sound simplistic, but I don't think it would be a bad idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, to maybe at the next meeting have a sample of an IEP, Joe Smith, and maybe have someone explain. I mean, I know what goes into an IEP because I've worked with it, but a lot of you guys probably don't even know what an IEP looks like, and maybe it would be helpful to understand when people are talking about individual education plans, exactly what goes into those and how hard the teachers work on getting those done with the parents. Because I think it would make it much more easier for you to understand how difficult the task is to implement an IEP, and teachers go above and beyond to do that. And maybe that's not something you'd want to see, but it wouldn't be, you can just, a generic IEP, just to give people an idea, okay, this is what one looks like, and this is what is required. So maybe you guys would all have a better idea of what the heck we're talking about when we're talking about IEPs. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I don't think it would be a bad idea. Because we're throwing around this, these words, and I think a lot of times, I'm sure you don't even know who is involved that writes the IEP, that develops the plan, that develops the goals, the social worker's role, the special needs teacher's roles, the parents' roles. I think it would be important for everybody to understand how important this document is and how hard the people that are writing it try to fulfill that. So it's maybe something to think about.
I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I like to run it by Ms. Riley. And I think coming up with a generic one, not an actual IEP, but kind of pull and put together what an average, so to speak, IEP might look like. And just kind of talk in bits and pieces. They can be pretty lengthy documents, but that's not a bad idea. Let me talk to Lynn about that.
I think there's been some confusion, both for myself and on the part of our parents. At a previous meeting, you talked about how IEP standards have not been changed. We're still supposed to meet IEP minutes, but parents have contacted me who students are supposed to have someone working with them all day and are wondering if we're supposed to be meeting all those minutes but not meeting that. It seems a bit of a gray area, like some things we're trying to do, and I understand the difficulty in it, but I think the communication has been confusing for parents as to what they should expect, if all of their minutes should be met or only some of them are going to be met. And I think it would be really helpful for myself included to have a clear understanding of what the expectations are.
Again, I think it's a good point. I'll talk to Lynn about coming in. Special education has been one of the most frustrating parts of COVID, is because from a federal standpoint, we're still required to provide everything, even though the federal government knows that schools across the country, not just in Illinois, can't possibly do that. So I had a conversation with Lynn just this afternoon about this and the incredible frustration that comes with not only being mandated to do that, but wanting to do that, but not being able to do it, getting some relief from the State Board of Education on general education requirements and some flexibility, and absolutely nothing in terms of flexibility from the federal government. And we recognize that that's in place so that students get what they need, but we also know that it's a reality, and again, not just in Illinois, but across the country, that schools across the country can't do that. So I'll ask Lynn to see if she can be at the next board meeting and answer some of those questions. I think that's a good point.
That'd be great.
Steve, my fellow board members have been really chatty tonight, so I haven't been able to get a word in edgewise, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of great things to talk about here. I just wanted to add on to the metric that will be discussed here on the 22nd. I hope that it'll be serve our parents well in being able to use that as a tool for their planning at home, because that's the resounding theme that I'm hearing is, we just need some guidance on what to expect. Mm-hmm. And granted, nobody really knows what to expect, but I'm hoping we'll have something useful for them that we can roll out on the 22nd. So fingers crossed there.
That's a really good point, and probably one of my greatest kind of question marks with that model is that the data can change from week to week. So in 1 week, the model as it is currently, we might be in a hybrid 1 week and then see a spike and need to pivot and go to a full remote model. And one of the challenges in doing that from the school's perspective is just the scheduling and the logistics. But for parents, just when you get kids set up in daycare, just when you get them set up to go back to school because you have a hybrid model and you've got daycare set up 2 or 3 days a week, cases spike, and now we've got to go back to a remote model all over again. And just kind of the length of time, what's reasonable, how fast do we need to do that? If the cases spike tremendously, we would absolutely have to make a change right away. But that's one of the questions. And I want to make sure that we've got that worked out on our end before we discuss it publicly, because I think your point's a good one. Parents need to have that information so that they can plan long-term, and I'm hopeful, and I think that metric will allow us to do that. We just need to answer some of these questions.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How do we take attendance? You talked about 97% attendance. How do we do that?
It varies at different levels, and if I misspeak, if any of the administrators just shout it out, or if it's elementary, I know that Mrs. Crawford is going to speak. At the elementary level, they're face-to-face every day. There's face-to-face time every day. So I believe the teacher enters that. As students get older, then there's some self-reporting. So for example, my high school student at home checks in herself and marks herself as present. I believe that's done at the middle school as well. But then we have office staff that go back and verify that. So if a student's not marked as attendant or being present, there's a phone call home, and there's a contact home to make sure that parents know that the student wasn't marked. One of the challenges, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, one of the challenges with attendance, especially at the middle school level, because self-reporting attendance is new for those students, is we know that we had students that were present but weren't marked present. So we're doing a little bit of cleanup with that data at the middle school level in specific to make sure that that data is correct. But after talking to the high school and the elementary schools, feel really confident that the data there is correct. And so teachers report it as students are younger, and then as they get older, students self-report, and then we follow up in the main office to verify that.
So, I mean, does the call go home, or does the call go, I mean, what if the parent is working? Do we just use the contact number they give us? Is that the idea?
Yep, we use the contact information that they give us, and parents can sign up for that. I'm not quite sure how I did this, but I got a notification the first day that my daughter was present, which is great. I knew she was present. I knew she was a little late that first day. But we use the contact information that's provided through Infinite Campus, which is our student database. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had heard about students who are experiencing a sense of isolation and loneliness. Is there an opportunity for students like that to get help, some counseling, some time with the social worker or with the counselor?
Students can contact, or parents for younger students can contact the schools and try to set up times where a counselor or staff member can connect with those students. Right now it could be virtual, it could be over the phone. So that can be done by the student themselves, that can be done by the parent. Or one of the reasons that we're taking attendance is and measuring engagement isn't just for academic purposes, but also to check in on students that we're not hearing from.
Right.
So if we don't hear from those students, then we reach out to them either with a phone call, an email, whatever the case may be. First and foremost, to make sure that they're okay if we haven't heard from them. Second of all, to get them re-engaged again. But there are opportunities for those students to contact somebody at school. And if school staff aren't able to meet those needs, there are community organizations that we work with or know of that we can refer those students to. So I think it was a really good point. Students can feel very isolated. There are ways to connect with staff at school or with other partners if needed.
Another point that was made that I just wanted to go back to, because I don't know the answer to this, and that is if somebody has a technical problem, I think there was a content unavailable or something like that. Is there a contact number to get immediate help, and is that 24/7, or is that? I mean, some of these kids might be working till late into the night.
So during the school day, there's always somebody in the main office, for example, or in our tech department. Excuse me. So a phone call can get answered right away. An email might take a little bit longer. After hours, we don't have somebody manning a 24-hour-a-day kind of tech hotline, so to speak. But I know that the tech department is very busy, so they're being contacted in terms of working on devices and things like that. We did experience some outages today. Google was down for a little bit. Infinite Campus was down for a little bit. Our network was working just fine. But those web-based programs experienced some outages today. So when that happens, we would encourage parents to contact school, make sure that, if there's something going on at school, we can communicate that to the parents. If there's not, we can tell them that we're aware of it and our hands are a little tied under those circumstances, but at least we can give parents and students a little bit of relief to know that, okay, it's not my fault, it's not the school's fault, we're waiting for the site to come back up and live. And so yeah, not necessarily 24/7. They can call the school during the school day, or they can email after hours.
And suppose you have a problem like the whiteboard being the print on the whiteboard being reversed, which I think would be extremely frustrating. Someone who's confronted with a problem like that is the first step to call for technical advice?
If a parent sees that or an older student sees that, first of all, I'd make sure that they talk to their teacher or call the main office. Hey, we're trying to log into this class and something's not quite right. If teachers experience that, and it may be something that they don't see on their end that gets reported by a parent or a student, then they would need to contact the tech staff within the district to take a look at that and help them work through that. Each of the buildings has some level of tech support, some a little bit more than others, but each building has some level of tech support. So for a technical issue like that, there would be tech in the building that could, visit that teacher's classroom. And in some cases, they can walk them through some things over the phone or with a quick email. But there are tech staff available to do that. They're pretty busy these days, especially this first, week, 2 weeks of school. But there are tech staff in the building to support teachers when they have those issues. And again, if parents or students see that, they can report it, call during the day, or email after hours. Same thing.
I also think it would be, there are certain programs that we've talked about. Canvas is, I think, one of them. I think I had asked quite a while ago if we could get a demonstration of what that is like, because I hear it all the time, but I have no clue what it's actually doing.
That's a really good question. Is that part of PD tonight, is just looking a little bit at Canvas?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it and show you kind of what it looks like, but it's not interactive. I think the best way would be to get all of you in it, whether it's a PD opportunity. We had talked about maybe the board admin retreat, but that's a little ways off still. I think it's in October. So if you wanted something, middle of October, I think, but if you wanted something sooner, we could look into that, or maybe just make a module accessible to you guys, but it'll take some time to walk you through it. So we could look at it for one of these meetings, or that admin retreat.
Yeah, the retreat might be fine, but
yeah. But I will speak to it tonight, a little.
That's good. The other thing is, if we can have some demonstrations of what some of this good stuff that you're talking about really is, and show us, some examples of that, I would really appreciate that.
Sure.
Because it's one thing to talk about it, but when it's virtual, hopefully we could see it.
So you'll see it tonight?
And understand the interaction that's going on virtually. Because not having ever, I've done virtual education and been in virtual education classes myself, but, I really haven't seen it at an elementary level. Those are all actually graduate school classes. So I'm having trouble seeing how that's going to work in an elementary level, and then even in a middle school and high school, because it's going to be different at each level. So something that gives us, examples of successes there, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't show us failures either. I mean, if we have a failure, hopefully we can learn by that too. I'm sure there's probably been a flub or two along the line, but but it really would be good to have some kind of example about what these successes do look like. Absolutely. And maybe that's for the board retreat too. I don't know.
Well, we can probably set up a module in the meantime, just kind of a basic module, what it looks like, and give everybody a login so you can log in and experience that, as well as maybe a Bitmoji classroom. Those are the popular thing at the elementary level is Bitmoji classroom. See if we can set that up so at least the board, can log in and take a look at that.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it in more detail at the board admin retreat.
Sure.
Steve, one more thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is the most appropriate section for it, but since there's not a detention report on here, suspension report, if you can comment on how discipline is being handled in this online environment. I know I got some text messages from parents last week of some inappropriate discussions. Kids were, on the side in the Google classrooms, and just kind of wondered. And I talked to some teachers and asked if there'd been any guidance from the district as far as here's how we're going to approach it as a unified front, or is it something that each teacher's kind of been left to decide, well, do I boot this kid from the classroom? What are those steps? Is that something that you're prepared to comment on tonight?
Yeah, that's a good question, good point, because we're certainly having some of those issues in some of the classes. In some cases, it's the student, maybe not using appropriate language or distracting other students. Unfortunately, it's also been adults in students' homes that have caused a little bit of a problem. So already we're experiencing some of those issues, and it's a question that's come up. We're working on some guidance at the district level on how to handle that. In the meantime, it's handled a little bit differently at each building and different levels. A minor issue, a teacher can correct that student, pay attention, try to re-engage them in the classroom. Teachers do have the capability to virtually kick a student out of the class, force them to leave if the distraction is significant enough. They can contact parents and have a conversation with parents. Administration can also help with that. And in particular, in some of the cases where it's been more significant, that's exactly what's happened. Administration has got involved either at the building level or in some cases, even at the district level. So we are seeing some of those incidents. Kids are kids, and even though it's a virtual environment, those are some of the things that we would be experiencing normally in a face-to-face environment. So that's how we've handled them kind of generally. Again, it's a little bit different at every level, not quite as prominent. Obviously at the elementary level, becomes more of an issue at the middle school and the high school level. But those are some of the steps that we've taken to do that. We have had a request to develop some guidelines from the district level on how to do that. And we'll do that and kind of adapt it for each of the levels. But that's generally how we would handle it. Any other questions for me? Okay. Well, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Christy Crawford, who's going to talk about Southeast School and things going on there, but I think also touch on some things kind of for all of the elementary schools as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, good evening. I'm Christy Crawford, the principal at Southeast, and I'm very pleased to be here tonight and talk with you a little bit, not only about Southeast, but actually about all of our elementary buildings in our first week. As you see, the title says Remote Learning, We Got This. And I can honestly tell you those are the words that our staff has lived by going into this first week. They have learned so much. I can actually say much more than I ever thought they could in a week, and applied it, and were able to walk into the situation of engaging our students with confidence. I'm not gonna lie, it's been many long days and evenings, and maybe even some later nights than that. They've worked through technology glitches, as Mr. Wilder has already talked about. And again, much learning and application to make this all work. But I can honestly say for a first week, I'm proud to say that it was a success. There was a lot going on, a lot of new things. This was uncharted waters for all of us. And the fact that we made it through, I think, says a lot about our staff, our students, and our families. You will see the student attendance rate, 98.3%. That was for all 5 elementary buildings. And we did have a few students on vacation, a few students that we are trying to get a hold of, things like that. So I'm not going to say that everybody was there, but we were very proud of the fact that students and parents made remote learning a priority for their families and worked with us throughout the entire week, even when things were difficult. As I said, the teachers also spent endless hours. I tried to list a little bit in the slide about things that they learned about in the 1 week before school started. But not only did they learn about the content, they also applied it because they wanted learning to be engaging for the students and achieve the learning standards that are a part of our curriculum. So in addition, we also had a district professional development committee that was recognized tonight who on their own time created 24 learning videos that staff could have access to throughout the summer. So not only was it the 1 week before school started, but it was actually many other videos that they could use to help strengthen what we were walking into. All of the elementary buildings had a Meet the Teacher material pickup day. So each grade level had a day when they were able to come to school, park their vehicles, get out and meet their teachers. And if you want to talk about excitement, it was then. The kids and even the staff, we were all so excited to see our little kiddos with us, to come up, and we did lots of air hugs, which was very hard for them because they want to hug their teachers. They want to be a part of us, but it went very successful. I know all 5 elementary buildings had a wonderful response rate to this. especially kindergarten. I know at my school, every single kindergarten parent showed up. So that was absolutely amazing. The kids collected materials that they would need for the first 2 weeks of class. For example, the kindergarten sent home color songs, so they'd be able to sing those as part of their remote learning. Books were sent home. Things for science experiments were sent home. So it was very nice for kids just to be able to get out, meet their teacher, have a picture taken, as you can see, with social distancing in mind. It was also a requirement that everyone had to wear a mask unless they were 2 years or under. And we really just found that this was worth $1 million to get everybody excited for learning. We will be continuing the material pickup. It will be every 2 weeks, but for the most part, it will start to become more of a drive-through process, but it'll still be teachers out waving, saying hi, getting things from students, and then giving them future things that they will need to make class be successful for them. We've also talked a little bit about the focus for the week. We had a reentry committee at the elementary that worked with all of the administrators throughout the entire summer. They really gave a ton of their time to create 3 plans because at that particular time we didn't know how we would be delivering curriculum once August came. And we talked about what our needs for our students would be, since they had not been back in the building since March 13th. And I can tell you that every member of that committee felt that the focus needed to be on creating relationships and learning how to use their digital device. And that's what we did. I can tell you there was very little math done, very little reading done that first week, because that wasn't what it was important to us. It was important to build relationships not only with the teacher and the student, but also between the student and their classmates. And that's what we did. I will be showing you some of the activities that we did for that in a few minutes. In addition, learning how to use their digital device to carry out tasks. For some of our little ones, this was really the first time they've ever had their own device to use, and it is a challenge. I cannot say enough kudos to our parents for working through this with us, because it was very difficult. And sometimes the machines weren't working like they should, or sometimes somebody got kicked out. But our parents really stuck with us. Our staff stuck with us when things went down the hill, and it did happen 1 or 2 times. But they kept the positive attitude and really worked with the kids on making sure that they understand how to act appropriately when they're in a remote learning situation, and then also just being able to complete any tasks that were asked of them. So that went on last week, and we'll also be doing that this week. In addition, I know some people talked about the synchronous time. We also have small group learning pods going on. As we move to the future, those will probably be more about reading and math and literacy and things like that. But for these first 2 weeks, that's where teachers can take a smaller group of students and really get to know them better. Maybe work more specifically with a student who is really struggling with their device, and just to begin assessments so that we know what level our students are at and can give them the best possible things to help them with their education. Social and emotional learning. Can we have the next slide, please?
We need to go back.
Hang in there, Christy. We can see the next slide up here.
You can't, okay, that's fine.
I know that they're working, there we go.
Okay, no problem. The next slide is about social emotional learning activities. One thing that I was so proud of all of our staffs in every building was they really felt that we needed to check in on the mood of our students each day, because they are dealing with some difficult things coming back to school and being in their homes and trying to get their education with mom and dad helping maybe instead of a teacher being right beside them. So they did a mood check-in each morning when they enter their Google Classroom. It allows our teachers to know how that student is feeling and assess if they might need more assistance in managing their feelings. I know that some of the mood check-ins even had the question, do you need to talk to me? Or do you need to talk to the social worker? Things like that. And I can honestly say that the students have been very honest about that. I know at Southeast, we've had a couple students who have gone to talk with our social worker because of things that have come up from what they have honestly put on their mood check-in. So I'm very appreciative of that. David, do you want to show that? I'll keep talking. I'm going to be showing you Mrs. Boltz's Google Classroom just as an example because she's a third grade teacher, so kind of in the middle of the whole elementary age. But when students come in the morning, this is what they go to. They go to her Google Classroom, and you can kind of see the background of her Bitmoji up there. But if we go down further, it'll take you to, click on, not there. Go back. Okay, there we go. This is what the kids come to every day. This is the first thing they see. And I can't tell you how many teachers created these. And it looks simple. Let me just tell you, these take hours to do. The administrators even tried doing their own offices. So I can tell you for a fact, these take hours to do when you're trying to get everything set up, all the hyperlinks done. Because if you click on those different things, they take you to other programs. She has her attendance and check-in. This was her check-in. And it just has some pictures just asking the kids how they're feeling for that particular day. But it's enough to give the teacher a feeling of whether we need to interact a little bit further with them or not. We also, I know there was a question about attendance. Attendance is taken every day. That is the attendance form that goes to the students at Southeast, and I can tell you it's exactly the same with maybe just different pictures at the other elementaries. When they first log in, you can see a video there. Those are the announcements for the day. At Southeast, I read words of wisdom. And then we make any building announcements, and then we also do the Pledge of Allegiance. So that is done right there with that video. And then the students mark their last name and what teacher they have, and that counts. Once that's done, that is showing that they were in attendance. We have had some difficulty getting everybody to know to do that, especially if they haven't been a part of the live meeting. But I think the principals have done an excellent job communicating that to parents and letting them know why we need that. And so things at all of the elementary buildings are getting much better with that. So that's nice. Let's see with that. So that's just another picture of the Bitmoji classroom that we have there. We've also done, you can go, David, to the schedule. In resources. Okay. This is just another form of the schedule that was sent home to all students and parents. Notice it gives the time, it gives the specific tasks that will be taking place, and then it also shows how it will be given, whether it's through Google Classroom, it's a live video, lunch, all those good things, and then it kind of gives you an overall time. So this is what the students in third grade at Southeast would be doing each day. So just another form of the schedule if parents wanted something more specific. We've also had SEL activities done by teachers who are not the classroom teacher. For example, Mrs. Majerus is one of our reading improvement instructors, one of our reading specialists, and we want the kids to also get to know those staff. So she went in one day to the first grade and did this See What We Have in Common activity. And what I really liked about this is it not only got students to know more about each other, but it also practiced them learning how to turn their computer on and off, or basically their camera on and off. So they would turn their camera on if you have a pet. And if you didn't, then you just left it as your little circle that showed up with your last initial. Turn on your camera if you like pizza. if you've ever been to Pumpkin Fest. And it just went on. And then finally, the last one was turn your camera on if you're in first grade. So everybody at the end had their camera on. But it was just a little activity that really helped not only find out about the students and each other, but also learn how to turn your camera on and off, which sounds like a very basic skill. But what we found with the elementary kids is that's really where we need to go when we're starting this. Things like mute and unmute, huge with this. And it's just really taking one skill a day and practicing it over and over, and then they get it. I have been so surprised at how successful they've been with this. I thought it would be days and weeks to get some of these commands learned, and they get it right away. They are incredibly awesome. I've been so proud of all of our kids because they're really showing that they've got it, and they're really giving their full to make this a good thing for us, as good as we can. So, yeah. The last thing that I had on here is checking in with staff. That's very important too. And I think sometimes we forget about that, but this is a new thing for our staff as well. And many of them have feelings, like being overwhelmed, worrying about their own family, their own kids and how they're doing with it because they're at school. So we do have, I have done a staff response sheet every couple days that I do. And what that does is it just has staff give me, it only goes to me, but they fill out a Google form just telling me how things are going. And I make it very easy. I make it check boxes that just have different things in them. They know they can check as many as they would like. And then there's also usually a spot where they can write more of a short answer to tell me specifically if there's something that they need or something that they're feeling. And I can say Southeast staff has been very honest. We've had some days that things were great, and we've also had some days where we struggled a little bit and we had to put some other things into place. So, David, do you have that sheet up there for staff response? Okay, well, it's very similar to the other forms. It's just more check boxes than it was the pictures like they had for Mrs. Bolt, so. Yep, there it is right there. So this is one that they got after the long weekend. They got that last night. And it just kind of talks about, what they did during their break to kind of tell me how much time they were spending on doing their work, how they felt about last week, how they're feeling about this week. And then there's a place at the end for them to, comment if they need something more specific. So that's what I did for staff. Challenges. The week was not without challenges. I know Mr. Wilder and other people have talked about that. That is certainly true. I truly consider the first week a huge success, but we did have to work through many things to make it come out that way. Many of these were tech related, I'll be very honest with you. I know that every tech staff member probably wishes that there would have been 2 of them in each building. But I do have to say they went nonstop, building to building at a moment's notice to make sure that everything was up and running for our students and staff. Some challenges that we had, first of all, just setting up a workspace for videoing and working with students. That's not something that we've ever had to do before. And it sounds very simple, but just getting all of your things so that you can access them with a simple hand movement and not have to get up. It took some practice and some time. You can see 2 different work areas there. The one on the left is Mrs. Strom, and the one on the right is Mrs. Peckham. They're very different in how they look, but that's what worked for them. You can even see, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the little message board behind Mrs. Strom just has changed so much now that we're doing remote learning. She has some computer signs that say mute, unmute. She says something about there on, mistakes are going to happen so that kids feel like it's okay if we don't do all of this correct the first time. So she's just kind of adapted with that, and I thought that was very neat that she can point to different things so that the kids feel like it's okay. On the bottom, we do obviously PLC meetings. This was the second grade PLC meeting on the bottom, and as you can see, it's even different for them doing that. Usually they'd be at a table right next to each other. In this one, I walked in on them. They're completely social distancing, have their masks on, but that's how they work every day to make sure that things are going okay for our kiddos. Another challenge was getting devices out to all the families. Once we started that, it just took off. Even parents who at first didn't think that they needed a device found out that they did. And to the best of my knowledge, and elementary people, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that every student in the elementary buildings who has asked for a computer has gotten one. We are at the very end of that, though, is my understanding. So, but we were able to do that. We did have some computer surprises. Teachers would say they had everything up and running, and then the screen goes purple. And it's like, okay, what are we gonna do now? Or like today, our internet went completely out at one side of the building at Southeast. But as I said before, the technology staff was all over it. Ed came over and had us back up and running before we were even supposed to start at 8:50. So that's how they're moving. They're really taking it seriously and helping us. Many tech assistance calls. I can't tell you how many times that phone rings and how many times it's for technology. Mrs. Hughes and Mrs. Woodstrup are now our building tech gurus. And I mean that in such a positive way, because that's something that they're not overly comfortable with, but they knew that it was a part of making this work. And so they would talk to Brian, they would talk to Roxanne, and get the answers to what they needed to help parents. And I can tell you, they were our first go-tos by the time the week was coming to an end. And they're the ones that helped get all these people logged in correctly, knowing what their password was, how to do this, how to do that. And it made just a huge effect in the building without it having to go to the teachers or to a tech person. So I really appreciated that. Another challenge was just making a balance happen so that staff, students, and parents felt genuinely comfortable with the remote learning environment, because it is very different. This cracked me up. The last quote I have on here was something that an actual Southeast teacher said to me, and we were joking, but it really kind of hit what we've been working with this week. And she said, it's like being a first-year teacher in Spanish and you've never had any instruction in the language. It's using different terms. It's interacting with the kids differently. It's using resources that are brand new to us, but yet they did it. They faced it. The kids and parents helped by taking it in, asking questions, keeping the lines of communication open, and as I said, we made it. Moving forward, the staff is still continuing professional development. I know the administration talked today about getting together with the tech committee, which we're doing tomorrow, to continue looking at a plan for other things that will help the teachers, learning tips and tricks with Google. We also were able to get Seesaw as a resource for their instruction, and some teachers are already very good with Seesaw, some are just learning. So we're pushing that out as students, staff, and parents feel comfortable with that. One thing I can honestly say is that the staff has pulled together so much in every single building. They're helping each other, they're encouraging each other. I have never seen teamwork like I have seen this year in Sycamore. And I've always been very proud of Sycamore and the way their teachers work together, but this year it's above anything I've ever seen. It's very impressive. It really shows how they're committed to each other and committed to helping our students learn no matter what way we have to do it. Students and families, like I've already said, they've been so supportive of remote learning. They're talking to us, they're giving us suggestions, they're telling us when things aren't going right, either with their software or something that happens. But they've just been patient, and that has been so nice. We haven't had parents coming in and yelling, and they might ask a question, but they're comfortable knowing that we're still learning too, and they're giving us that opportunity to do that. Again, still working on some of the technology glitches, but I feel like every day that improves. The number of calls we've been getting has gone down significantly each and every day, so I feel like people are getting more comfortable with everything. Last Thursday, we did a question and answer session, one at 4 o'clock, one at 6 o'clock, and any parents could log on and ask questions of their teacher. We had people participate, but not really as many as I thought. And I thought about that for a while. I'm like, is that a good thing? But I really feel like it was, because they had been so vocal during the earlier part of the week and taken care of any questions that they had. I don't really feel like they had questions. You know, we did have people participating, but it certainly wasn't the whole classroom. So I took that as a good thing, that people were comfortable with what we were doing and knowing that we were really working our hardest. Thank yous. I know that we've honored a lot of people tonight, but I just want everybody to know this week would not have happened if we wouldn't have had all the help. And I listed them there. I don't necessarily need to go through them all because we've talked about them. But first of all, to the students' families and caregivers, they're giving us a chance and they're helping us with this flow of instruction each and every day. And to me, that is such a huge undertaking that we truly need to be appreciative of. Every teacher has given their all and truly made this a #1 priority. I can tell you, in my building, if I walk down the hall at 9 a.m., it is silent because every teacher is in their classroom with their door shut, meeting with their kids. And you can hear the excitement, you can hear the laughter, you can hear the stories being shared, you can hear the teacher going through the activities for the day. It means so much, I feel, for both our staff and our kids to be able to work together like this, since we're not able to be together physically at this point. The reentry committee, the professional development committee, the SEL committee, I've listed the things that they've done, but to me, we wouldn't have made it this far without them. The technology crew, they should be up here right now. I mean, they have given so much to help us really get where we are. Our office staff has taken on new roles as well, being kind of the phone calls that helped with all the technology issues. One thing I also want to say is, this is to my fellow elementary administrators, we have united and stood as a team all summer long, and I think that is so important to show our staff. They've noticed it. We've gotten them involved in everything that we're doing, and I just feel like as an elementary group, we have grown so much, even though this wasn't something that we anticipated or really wanted to happen. I think it's made our elementary buildings wonderful, working together. It's not Southeast, it's not North Grove, it's not South Prairie, it's elementary. And we are working together to make sure we're making good decisions for our kids. Finally, to Steve and all the district office staff, I can tell you they have fielded thousands of questions, and thousands is not an over-exaggeration. I know even with the administrators, we would get one question answered and we would have 5 more for them, because it just kicks into, okay, I know this, now what do I do about this? So they have just really helped direct us down this path that we've gone, and they've made a huge difference as well. And in summary, this just really hit home with me today. It truly does take a village to raise a child, and I feel confident that that is what Sycamore is doing. Questions?
Wow, Mrs. Crawford, that was really an amazing report, and thank you. It really, for me anyway, it really struck home all the work. We know that you've been working so hard, you and staff and teachers, and it's just amazing. And I mean, to see, for me, what struck me was the classroom, Mrs. Boltz's Google Classroom that you're able to show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a fantastic display. As I sit here as a parent, I look at that and I go, wow, that's something that is neat to look at. I guess what I wonder though is what grade level can a kiddo sit down there, and I know all kiddos are different.
Mm-hmm.
Can they sit down there by themselves and navigate that classroom on the other side of all that really hard?
Well, and
hard,
honestly, I will
work?
tell you, if I said, we got this, I also said less is more. And that's what we had to convince ourselves, is that we don't have to go full powwow out to everybody the first day. We can grow into that. And so you're exactly right. For some of the smaller kiddos, the Bitmoji classroom is just the teacher and maybe one application there that they can, touch on. And you really start small, you start slow, you repeat a lot so that they're practicing it and getting it. And like I told you, I was absolutely amazed at the progress our students have made with the technology. They're blowing it out of the water. I think some of them, I know some of them know more than I do. They're just amazing with this.
Oh, absolutely, and the learning curve will continue to fall, I have no doubt about that. I just sit there and think about some of the real small kiddos who are kindergarten, even first grade. First grade's that age where kids really start to learn how to read, right?
Sure.
So as they advance, I'm sitting there thinking like, I just think about the parent at home who's going to have to constantly, or carekeeper or grandpa or grandma, work with these kids from the entire day, basically. So that's where I still think about in my mind. And this, believe me, that's not taking away from all the hard work that you guys have done, but at the end of the day, I still think about that parent and some of the parents that we heard from tonight who are just toiling with all this at home. And so...
And two, that's when the teachers might take that 1 or 2 students and put them into a learning pod and just go through with them what to do.
Good.
Or have sent the parent maybe more explicit instructions on you press this and then this to help them. So I do feel like the staff is aware of, students who are struggling a little bit more and are working to help them to the best of their ability as well.
Awesome. And I know, I always teach my own children, who are now adult children, amazingly, to advocate for themselves and not, sometimes we're stubborn and we want to learn those things ourselves. But I hope that you and your staff can identify those parents who may be afraid or may just be too stubborn to reach out for help. So I hope that can continue as well.
Sure.
So thank you.
Sure.
That was an amazing presentation. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for the long list of thank yous, and I'm sure I speak for everyone here when we want to say that we express the same gratitude to all those individuals, and I'm sure there's many more people that we owe our thanks to here as a board, but in particular, you highlighted a great number of people. I also agree with you that one of our greatest strengths is teamwork and working together, and we've seen that over the years for the elementary schools and how you all work together and selflessly, and it sounds like it's even a tighter bond this year than it's been in the past. So thanks to you and to your fellow elementary school administrators too for doing that and having that spirit, and especially to the staff for having that spirit, because I know there was a little rough going a little earlier, but it's really important for us to stay together, to work at this. It's certainly not the ideal.
No.
But we have to make the best of a bad situation, and I appreciate this. Normally we'd be at your school and we would be taking in the ambiance there, and it's kind of strange to have this here, and you're really the first principal to report to us. So I think you set a very high standard for your fellow principals. So
well, thank you.
You certainly set the bar high. So we'll see what they can come up with as.
Well, I will tell you that when I was doing this, I came up with a list, but I also asked them for their input as well. So this is really from all of us. So I know it was specifically about Southeast, but we had just been in school for a week, so I also kind of wanted to tell what was going on in all of our buildings, not just Southeast.
Yes, and it was very helpful to get that insight of what's going on across all the elementary schools. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and please take our thanks back to your staff. And
I certainly will.
we would be doing that in person.
Yeah, you got something.
But unfortunately, it's a different world. So.
That's right. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Ms. Crawford, I just wanted to comment. My kids go to Southeast, so I can attest for everything you put in your presentation. It's all 100% true. This is not the ideal situation for anybody. I don't think anybody sits here and says that it is, but I really appreciate the amount of time and the amount of effort that the staff, I can specifically stay there because my kids go there, but have put in to making this the best environment that they can. My kids are in second grade. Their teacher's been phenomenal throughout this whole thing, and just hearing little bits and pieces of comments to students, their communication of the extra effort and the extra work that's gone in on the teacher standpoint to make sure that this is as good as it can be for every single person in there. So, if the internet was a little sketchy on the student's part or at home, hey, I'll record this for you so you can watch it cleanly later. Those stories in just a week, being able to hear them and get a little bit of that experience, it's been great to see, and to all the teachers probably throughout the district. There's a hearing from even some of those teachers personally is there's a lot of time and effort that goes in behind the scenes for things that maybe the common community member, parent doesn't necessarily see, but that is definitely happening, and we hear that from you guys when you present up here, and we just really appreciate it. I definitely want my kids back in person as soon as possible. They want to be back in person. They communicate that a lot, but we really just appreciate all the effort and all the work. I really do.
Well, thank you. We're happy to do it. We love those little ones, so anything for them.
And Mrs. Crawford, I'll echo the same sentiment. And having a fourth grader in another elementary school, I can also attest that this is, at least across all the elementary levels, I'm confident that they're getting that same sort of experience and engagement. And I really applaud that there's been thought put into beyond just the content, but kind of creating these environments, trying to replicate to the best of our ability the sense of being in the classroom. Even with the Bitmoji classroom and everything, it gives the child a way to somewhat escape the confines of the screen and feel like they're somewhere else, even if it's just for limited periods of time each day. I appreciated seeing the attendance numbers. I think that's at least one metric for determining whether kids are somewhat engaged, but I was curious if we had some other metric that we were looking to implement at some point that might be a better measurement of how well they're actually engaged throughout the day, as far as questions they're asking during those live sessions. Are they constantly in front of the screen? Are they looking away? Is there something that's going to be implemented along the way, or feedback that you're soliciting from the teachers themselves that might give an idea of this is working for them, this isn't working for them, by 1 o'clock we've lost them? Maybe those teachers then meeting with the past year's teachers of those students and saying, how were they in the live classroom? Just so we can get a sense as we move forward. Is this tenable? Should we encounter this situation in future years as a district, as a global community? Is this really something that works? Can you speak to any of that?
Sure, absolutely. I can tell you it is one of the principal goals for all of us, all 5 of us this year, is student engagement. Like I said, we've talked about a couple students who we've had to look into a little bit more deeply just because they weren't doing the attendance, or we've called and, just some things were concerning. We are currently working on an engagement referral process so that we know, after these many excused absences, this is what we do. This many unexcused, this is what we do. And really trying to get a lot of people involved. So there's many people reaching out to them. So we will be probably getting that solidified here in the next week, and we'd be happy to share that with you, but that's one of the big things we're working on. And then you're exactly right, just talking with teachers. I've checked in with some of my teachers about particular students, but that would be another place where we could really focus on, is having the teachers be involved and also giving us some comments about student engagement, and if there's anybody who's doing a great job, and kids who maybe need a little extra help with that, and then working as a team to make sure that we can offer that for all of our students.
Okay, great. And maybe it's something as well that our counselors or psychologists at some point throughout the day, they could have a random assignment that once a day they are able to somehow anonymously check in on one of the Google Class, live synchronous, whatever word we want to use.
And they are doing that, I will tell
Meetings to
you.
just kind of take a 5-minute tally, how many kids are
Right.
staring at the screen and engaged, and how many look like they're off.
If parents have even, we have had parents who've called and said, I'm having trouble, I don't know how to make them settle down, they're, out of their seat. So teachers are helping parents that way, the social workers helping. I've had parents reach out to myself. So I really feel like it's a team really trying to address any concerns parents have brought to us as well.
That's great. I mean, I'd really love to see at some point, I don't know if it's after 9 weeks, but when we start looking at that assessment data and figuring out, how effective is the education from a testing standpoint, it'd be nice to see some sort of data come back from that as well that says here's what we believe our engagement level is and where we might have expected it to be if they were in person or just something qualitative. If
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Next up on the agenda is appointments to Finance Subcommittee. Nicole talked about this at the last meeting, just kind of creating a Finance Subcommittee. If I recall correctly, and if I make a mistake, let me know, that board members that were interested could contact Mr. Dombeck, and then really that's board president's responsibility to make those appointments. So.
Well, I'll exercise that responsibility. I'm going to appoint Eric Jones and Chris Wren to the committee. Thank you for agreeing.
I accept your appointment.
Me too.
Thank you. Nicole will be in touch with both Eric and Chris moving forward, but we appreciate your additional service to the board and the community. I followed on Nicole's lead from last meeting, and one of the things that I talked with Mr. Dombeck about was creating a kind of resurrecting, rather, the Citizens Advisory Committee. This committee was already established, although it had been inactive. It allows for two-way communication, especially under the current circumstances, but also into the future. So my goal would be, in kind of reviving this committee, is that this would allow parents and stakeholders to have some input and some two-way communication with myself as well as a couple of the board members, and then the makeup of that committee might change a little bit based on the circumstances, but we would be able to work with that committee through the current circumstances. Hopefully that's short term and we can get back to normal operations, but then have that committee in action as we move into the future. So whatever initiatives the district might take on, or just kind of normal operations. Mrs. Davey and Mr. Shiloh were already assigned to that committee. I've checked with both of them. They're still willing to serve in that capacity, which I appreciate. There's a challenge here for the committee to be big enough to gather feedback from the community, but also not so large that it becomes challenging just to get work done. So the ideal size to me is about 12 members. That might fluctuate a little bit, particularly because of the current circumstances that we're under, but that's the initial goal. We'd like to get some administrators, staff members, parents, and community stakeholders on that. In the community survey that we put out in July, we asked parents if they were interested in serving on any sort of committee or focus group. So we went back to that data from that survey. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but there were over 800 parents who were willing to serve on that sort of committee or in that sort of capacity. So we have plenty to choose from to whittle it down to 12. I've asked for some help within the district to do that, especially because I'm new and don't know all the community quite yet. And then we may solicit additional members to serve on that committee, depending on the topic that the committee is discussing or working on, but also to make sure we've got a good cross-section of the community. So in terms of parents, I think it's ideal to have a couple parents from the elementary level, and not just one school, but across the district, a couple parents from the middle school level, a couple parents from the high school level, and then we may pull from community stakeholders that may not have current students in the district currently, but could be valuable to be part of that committee and work with us. So that committee is going to get off the ground. I'm working through identifying some parents and then extending invitations to parents. I'll work with James and Julene on that. and then round that committee out and get that committee meeting. So we'll get the Citizens Advisory Committee back off the ground and up and running. Any questions about that? Okay.
I think it's a good idea. As soon as we can get it up and running, the better.
I truly think that's one of the areas that, I fell short in, and during the transition was not getting community members engaged enough. There was a lot of tap dancing going on, just a lot of work that went on over the summer as I was getting going, but now we're kind of at an equilibrium where I think there's an opportunity to do that and something that we need to do. So I appreciate the board's support on that. Next up would be the Memorandum of Understanding with the Sycamore Education Foundation. This actually goes back to prior to my time. There were some questions about the MOU, and I worked with Mr. Nelson on that a little bit, talked with Mr. Reineck. He was involved in helping with some of those things. And then lastly, I talked to Mr. Dombeck about it last week. There's still some unresolved questions that we need to address. So actually what I'm going to recommend is that we table any action on the MOU tonight and then revisit it on September 22nd.
Is there a motion to place the Sycamore Education Foundation Memorandum of Understanding on the table?
Jones?
Second, Jacobson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sure.
Opposed? Okay. We'll table it.
Thank
Bring
you.
it back up next meeting.
Next up is approval of the graduation date. Typically, the school district has approved a graduation date in September. I know it's a long ways off, and there are some unknowns between now and then. But the recommendation from Mr. Carlson, the high school principal, is to schedule graduation ceremony for the class of 2021 on Sunday, May 31st, 2021 at 2 o'clock in the Sycamore High School Fieldhouse. Would ask the board to approve that recommendation. As I said, we're still a ways out. I think that date is pretty typical from years past. We'll have to continue to monitor the circumstances and the situation. If we feel like we need to tweak that at all, we'll do that and be as proactive as we can, but we'd like to get that date on the calendar now.
Is there a motion to approve Sunday, May 30th as the date for graduation for Sycamore High School?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The last item under the superintendent's report is policy revisions. What I'm asking the board to consider approving the first reading of the policy revisions tonight. This is press policy update number 104. Update number 105 has already been released. So we're a little behind, but not too far. I reviewed the policies with the policy committee, which is Mr. Dombeck and Mr. Nelson, on July 24th. We had some questions that needed some legal review. Most of the policies were pretty straightforward. Those are in the board packet, if I remember correctly. There were a couple of policies that we had questions on. Those are still pending our district's legal counsel review and response. What I've done in the past in previous positions is recommend that the policies be approved as is or as presented on the first reading, but not take any further action until we get that legal counsel, the legal review back on those couple of policy updates. Nothing would be final and nothing would go into effect until they're approved on a second reading, which could happen as soon as September 22nd.
Yeah, what we typically do is unless somebody moves to approve, we keep them on the agenda until the next meeting.
Okay. As long as everybody's comfortable doing that, that's what I would recommend that we do. And again, I won't bring them back or recommend that they come back until we've got that legal review on those last few policies. Great, thank you. I believe that ends the superintendent's report. Now we're going to transition to the assistant superintendent's report, Mr. Reineck.
So I will start off with a picture here, southeast, pretty fitting that Christy presented, but On Friday, I had the pleasure, the opportunity to walk through Southeast and see what was going on in the classrooms. I was amazed with what our teachers were doing, how they were engaging students, and then seeing a full screen of 20 to 25 students engaged, and teachers just thinking outside the box. I can't say enough about that staff, or the staff at Southeast, but one of the teachers in particular, Susie Middleton, came across a situation where she had to think outside the box a little bit, just with new guidelines, wanted to be very cautious, and was going to teach from home, but realized the lesson she had planned, she wanted an Elmo to really enhance that lesson. So Susie lives about an hour away, decided to drive to the school, but to be extra safe and cautious again, taught the entire day from outside the building, set up her little workstation. I did not know this going into it, so I parked at Southeast, and if you can envision Southeast, you kind of have to walk a little ways around that circle drive. All I could hear was this staff member got inside and said, "Chris, you have a staff member outside. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know if they're on their cell phone or what." She said, "No, it's Mrs. Middleton." We walked out there, and she had a full screen of students engaging them and thinking outside the box. So I can't say enough about the staff and Susie. So anytime, anywhere, professional development, this is what I'm really here to present on. We already recognize staff. I wish I would have done a better job of just saying how amazing staff was while they were all here. I didn't expect them to still be here now, but the PD they put together is something that I think we've been talking about for a very long time. Personalizing PD, we've talked about MCL for students, but that next step is to do it for staff as well. So it's been something Dr. Webster and I have talked about probably since I've been here. It's been something that Mike Rice and I have talked about since before he even came back to the district, when we were just colleagues at neighboring districts. And this entire situation gives us an opportunity to execute this, to make it happen. Another part of that is to develop a bank of PD, something that when we hire a new staff member, that they can refer to. These will always be there for staff to look at, or for our current staff to look back on if they want to revisit a topic. So again, this all gave us that opportunity. It's flexible, it's personalized, and then it was for staff and students. And Mike and Chris will speak to that a little bit here. There were three threads that we wanted to focus on for this PD. Technology, and within that, our LMSs that we've talked about. So teachers needed professional development on Canvas and on Classroom. We had teachers using these things already, but not everyone was necessarily having to use these. And then instructional, we wanted to prepare for remote, right? An entire new model that staff hadn't really taught in before. And then also one-to-one. The high school had a glimpse of it last year, which, in retrospect, it was a great opportunity to set us up for the spring in something that we weren't expecting in a segue into this year. But other staff needed that. And then SEL, and I mentioned this earlier, how do we support teachers coming back? And there were multiple aspects of that. We're coming back from a pandemic. Their school year was kind of cut short over a weekend in terms of not being able to come back, not being able to say bye to students in the way they traditionally would. There were safety concerns or things that needed to be addressed. And then a lot of things have happened just in society since we've left, outside the pandemic regarding social injustice and topics that teachers need an opportunity or a platform to discuss amongst one another, but then also to be prepared to discuss those topics with students, because students are going to want to talk about some of the things going on. So then that became part of that professional development as well. We developed this part series called Educational Leadership for Diversity and made part one available to our staff. Again, it was a committee that worked together, but then it was created by teachers and then applied using the Canvas LMS. And I mentioned this earlier, we broke it up into two different groups. So kind kind of umbrella group. So Dr. Webster took K-8, and then Mike Rice and myself worked with 9-12. So right now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Webster, and she's going to speak to the K-8 piece, and then she'll hand it off to Mike Rice, and he'll speak to the 9-12. I will just tell you that because there's been questions about Canvas, or interest, I should say, that Mike will speak a little bit to that Canvas piece as it pertains to professional development, and then kind of what it looks like from a student and teacher perspective before we really get into something more interactive in future board meetings. So, Dr. Webster.
Hi, good evening. It's good to see everybody again. It's been a couple weeks. So as you know, over the summer, we had a lot of feedback from teachers that they really wanted that professional development to help prepare them for something that we've never experienced before. So really, we took a kind of a two-pronged approach. Our first approach over the summer, as Mr. Reineck has spoken about, is that anytime, anywhere learning for teachers, and really PD for teachers by teachers, really developing our teacher leaders, building that capacity within our district, so that we could provide that support for our teachers more authentically in a day-to-day environment, not just in a particular workshop or a one-day PD session, that really embedded authentic professional development. So our focus this summer was primarily on using technology as a way to transform learning. And it really was bigger than just how do we operate in a hybrid environment or how do we operate in a remote learning environment. It really was how do we use technology to transform learning in any environment. Obviously, the focus was also on hybrid and remote, as those were our potential realities at the time. But the picture is bigger than just this immediate period of time. It's in general. We had our teachers, we had a group of the Professional Development Committee, a group of teachers who created 24 one-hour teacher-created asynchronous modules. And there's that asynchronous word, as you see. As Mr. Reineck had said, our focus really is on, we've been providing all these opportunities for our students, and to really walk the walk of MCL, professional learning, all of those things, we have to provide it for our adults as well. And really providing things that are meaningful for them and building that library, right, of a place, a repository that they can access at any time. So we created those 24 one-hour teacher-created asynchronous modules. The topics of those were also chosen by teachers, for teachers, based on information that we got from teachers on what it was that they had questions about, what they felt they needed support in. So again, that was authentically based and embedded in what the needs were at that time. Some of the feedback that I've gotten from teachers actually echoes, again, what Mr. Reineck said, is not only did they really appreciate having that over the summer, they love having that space to go back to over and over again as things have more meaning. Because, you know, the first time you hear something, you kind of get it at that base level. And then you kind of go back, and there's all sorts of other things going on. But to be able to have the ability to go back and then look at it again later, maybe when your brain is a little fresher, maybe when you have a deeper understanding of it, or you just don't remember one piece of it, and to know that it's always there for you. So I've gotten a lot of feedback from teachers that that's also something that's been very helpful for them. So that was kind of the pre-game PD, I would say. And then as we got closer to the beginning of the school year, and we did add those extra professional development days, we really wanted those days to be useful and meaningful for teachers to provide, again, that support that they needed to start the school year strongly. So the Illinois Association of School Administrators offered a 3-day professional development called Build a Unit. And so the focus of that training was to actually walk through how to meet the needs of learners on multiple levels in remote and hybrid learning environments, but also in a fully in-person environment. So all of the things that we're learning can really be, I'll use that word nimble again, can be used in all 3 of those settings. One of the days focused on SEL. It's fabulous to see so many of the things in the Google Classrooms that you're seeing are things that they learned about and took back from that training. Those check-in, mood check-ins, the Bitmojis are all things that they learned this summer, either from our teacher leaders or from IASA. So each of the teachers that participated in that IASA training had an opportunity to learn and then apply and reflect, which was fabulous because that was also the model that we set up over the summer for our district PD, that teachers had not just the opportunity to be exposed to new material, but to apply it and reflect on it, which is something that we often lack when we provide professional development for teachers, is that time to apply and reflect. The teachers that went to the IASA training were department chairs, team leaders, teachers that had already been identified leaders in the district of their peers and colleagues. They then came back after that 3-day training and planning and were able to work with the building administrators at the building level to provide meaningful professional development during that week of those extra days that we added. And we've gotten tremendous feedback that that was really the catalyst, not only for providing the support they needed, but the feedback I'm getting is that it bolstered their confidence as well. We got this, I heard, Christy said that. There were several teachers during the training, because I participated in the training with them, that said, I can do this. I'm a teacher. This is what I do. It just looks a little bit different, but this is what I do. I can do this. And so kind of getting over that piece was important as well. So it was fabulous. The next step, so that I know that we talked today about, there's some questions that came up about the next step. So that was the first piece, right? The first piece was getting us off to a good start. The next piece is how do we maintain that momentum and continue to improve. So the next part of that step, just so that you are aware, on October 1st, the SEA leadership and administrators will be having another meeting on professional development to plan for what are the next steps. Now that we're here, now that we're started, what are the next steps going forward to provide support for teachers and students in whatever learning environment we find ourselves in, and that will also be based on feedback we get from teachers. So that was the KA portion. Did you have anything to add to that, Mr. Ronick?
No.
Any questions for me? I tried to get through that quickly, so I know it's late in the evening. And I'll be happy to bring, have actually one of the building administrators or one of the people on the PD committee bring a Google Classroom, just like you're going to do with the Canvas, so that we can kind of show how both of those things work. So, thank you.
Mike still here?
Yeah. He's coming.
Okay.
Could have filled the silence.
Yeah, I was ready to jump in and wing it, I guess.
Yeah, so I apologize. I did miss the beginning of the meeting. I was at home with my son, but my wife got home and I'm here now. So I want to jump on the thank you bandwagon because, first of all, thank you to you. Everything we're talking about right now in regard to professional development, we could do it because we got some extra time. And we came to you and asked for that, and you were gracious enough to grant it. So thank you for that. And I just have to reiterate, since I wasn't here earlier, the staff at the high school just nailed this professional development. I think we were lucky enough to have some guidance from Dr. Webster and kind of the structure that our K-8 teams were using. The high school had a bit of a different task just because we were shifting from Google to Canvas. And so trying to put everything through that lens is kind of why it landed with Nick and I to kind of work on that as well. So I'm used to having my little clicker down here, but you can go ahead and flip to the next one. So the first thing I want to talk with you guys about tonight is just our Canvas professional development, the pieces that kind of lived on there. So like you've heard, the majority of our professional development was designed by our staff, and that was by design. We are lucky enough at the high school to have 5 tech coaches. I was one of them last year, so I've worked with that team. A lot of them have done blended instruction or blended classes. Most of them are all of them are fairly confident with technology. So to have that crew to kind of lean on and talk about how do we build something that's going to help our staff understand how to use Canvas, but at the same time model for them how it can be used and what some of the best practices for students would be, that was essential. I don't think we could have done it without them. So like I said, it was teacher created. Right now, between those 5 individuals and myself and a few other staff members that you heard acknowledged tonight, we have about 14 hours of online modules that, like Dr. Webster said, and I think Mr. Reineck has said, they're there forever. And so as staff need to revisit those, they can. As we onboard new staff, they can go onto those pieces. So using this platform to bring together some of that professional development was great. Like I said, we really modeled our best practices for students. We used this same sort of approach that Dr. Webster talked about when we did some instruction, some application, and some reflection. And honestly, that reflection piece for us, we used that opportunity to model the discussion board feature of Canvas, which we can show you when we get that opportunity. it was unlike anything I've ever seen in an awesome way. We have, like I said, about 14 different courses that staff can go through, and hundreds of comments of them sharing ideas that they have after they've seen something, talking back and forth to each other about, oh, that's a great idea, I want to try it this way, inviting each other into each other's classrooms. And those are the pieces I think that are really hard to achieve during professional development days. Typically, we push staff so much that they're burned out by the end of the day. They go home, and when they come back the next day, we're right back into teaching, and you don't have that time to really work with your peers and your colleagues. And I think, while less than ideal, obviously doing it on the computer, as we've been kind of referencing all night, it gave them that opportunity, and I think that was really important for them. So important that 94% of the staff that we surveyed all of them, 94% of them said they want to see more like this. They enjoyed it, they felt like they learned a lot from it, it was engaging, and they really liked the fact that they could go back to it as well. So that was, in my mind, fairly successful. But I want to show you a little bit about what that actually looked like. So David, you could click it for us again. I won't go through all of these, but these are the various modules that are available to staff. Some of them, most of them, are worth professional development hours. We also use this as a place to warehouse some of just the information that we needed to get out to staff. We wanted to have it all in one place. You can kind of see the threads that Mr. Reineck alluded to earlier. Our expectations and resources also included some of our social emotional pieces. Working with that SEL staff, or the SEL team, you know, I heard it from them multiple times. Mike, one of the things that's stressing your teachers out the most right now is they don't know what to expect when they get back. And so we really wanted to focus on what do the rules look like, what are the cleaning procedures that we ended up not needing necessarily, but those sorts of things that at the time we implemented this we thought we might need, we really wanted to make sure those got just as much airtime as some of the other pieces we were addressing. In the instructional column there, you see several modules of how to plan for different levels. We've got our hybrid up there, we've got remote up there, different things that teachers could go through, and it just kind of started the ball rolling on how do I start thinking about how to plan for these pieces. And then 2 levels of Canvas. We did have quite a few staff members last year that used the Canvas platform. And it was important to us to try to have something out here that was meaningful to everyone. I don't think we succeeded in that. We have some power users of Canvas that probably could have taught all of these, but hopefully they were able to find some meaning in some of our other classes. So I think the variety of content that we offered staff was good. We've got good feedback on that, and we're planning to keep adding to this. Much like Dr. Webster said, we've got our meeting coming up in October. We've already surveyed our staff on what would those next things be that you need to start feeling even more comfortable in your classroom. So we'll keep moving ahead with those. Go ahead, David. We used a badging system within Canvas, kind of micro-credential sort of piece, that when a staff member would complete one of our courses, you'll hear me use the word kind of courses and modules interchangeably. I can talk more about that when we show you the inner workings of Canvas. Those are not their actual names. So when this is the student side of Canvas. So within any course, you can use this badging module, and you can turn on the leaderboard section. You can turn on competitions, and students are assigned these wacky names. But that way you don't see who's who, and it doesn't inspire any shame. It's more that competition piece. These don't have to be on at all, but this was a way that we were able to track it too, so we could start to see how many of our staff members completed all of these. You'll see a slide in a little while that Mr. Reineck's going to share that talks about kind of how much completion we had and where teachers were living. But many of our staff members not only finished every module that we had, but also came to our in-person sessions as well, and some even went above and beyond that. So the time spent preparing for this year was something special. And David, can you click it again? So like I said, we didn't just do Canvas. We also did some face-to-face pieces. And this is an example of the kind of schedule for our first day, our first official day back with, well, I guess this would have been the second official day back with staff. But we wanted to use this tool called Schedge for a couple different reasons. Obviously, we wanted, again, to create some choice for staff. You see up there the remote learning expectations and the Sycamore model. All staff had to attend that one. But outside of that, we offered a couple different choices to teachers, wanting to try to make sure they could get where they needed to really feel like they could start the year. So we did that on both Tuesday and Wednesday. We use this platform to help us keep the room sizes where they needed to be. Obviously, with a staff as large as we have at the high school, we have to think about, just like we did with our students, how many people can be in the same space. And so this software allowed us to do that. But it also kind of put an air of, I guess, professionalism or just a little bit more fancy, if you will, but just something to make those days feel a bit more like a conference. And we know that our staff is going to have trouble getting out to things this year with the way that things are. And we're trying to kind of rebrand that Sycamore Sycamore High School version, at least, of professional development. So using a tool like this not only helped us manage behind the scenes, but also make it really easy for staff to see what was available, really easy for them to select, and just kind of lend that air of importance to it as well. So Nick, if you want, or David, if you want to click again. We wanted to take it one step further than that. And so it's weird to talk about professional development for students. We really did think of that. It's really just teaching them. But we knew that our next customer, if you will, was the student themselves. Our staff had to know how to use Canvas, but so did our students. So what you're looking at right now is the homepage for every single course at Sycamore High School. And there's no shame in me telling you I had to be convinced to do this. So Sydney Zune brought this to me. She's one of our tech coaches. I'm sure she worked on it with the rest of her team as well. But when she showed this to me, my immediate reaction was, no, I don't want to change one more thing on the staff. Until they wore me down and talked about how important this would be. And we have gotten so many notes, emails, comments made about how much easier it is to navigate things now that it's the same everywhere. So I will publicly admit I was wrong. I'm very grateful for our tech coaches who kind of talked us into this, and it's made navigating for our students, for our parents, for our case managers, for all of those support structures so much easier. And you can see on there on that bottom, this is a blank one that would obviously be filled out for whatever course it was in towards the top, but that bottom row of 8 icons stays the same. And so a student that's looking for certain things in a class, for example, they always know where to click to see that weekly schedule. This is kind of the less creative, more high school version of that teacher's homepage. What's behind the scenes here is where the teachers can get really creative and have to change things up, and we'll walk you through some of those pieces as well. But for our staff and just knowing our students and our parents deal with so much, we wanted to make sure that they were all pretty consistent there. David, can you click one more time? Took it one step further, and we created a homepage for our students. So this is a course that every single student is enrolled in. We obviously have the 9, 10, 11, and 12 kind of buckets there that we can push information out to them. But in addition to just this kind of landing page, we filmed a video for students. Some of you may have seen it. So it went out before their first day, kind of welcoming them back, walking them through how to get to Canvas, talking about some of what those expectations might be. And then also there's this digital student boot camp that had to be done. And again, I have to give all credit to our tech coaches who built this boot camp. And if you want to click it one more time, I know this will be difficult to see on the next screen, but these are the sorts of things that our students had to go through before day one. And they were due by the end of day one, but the majority of our students actually started this before that, knowing, okay, from experience, from our students that have used Canvas, from our teachers that have used Canvas, what are those things that students really need to be able to do from day one? And that's what these various parts of the module were. So I won't read them all to you, but they're looking at, how do I submit my work? How do I record or take a screenshot and submit that? How do I record a video? Those things that they're really not that difficult, but if you've never had somebody show you how to do it, it can be a barrier to participating in class that day. So we had them go through that as well. And David, you can click it one more time. Turn it over to Mr. Reineck here to talk about some participation data, and then I'll stick around if there's any questions about that as well.
So I know one thing we talked about when we pushed that start date back was wanting to know kind of what engagement looked like. Just to review, there were 7 required hours for that PD. And as Mike had said, there were up to 14 module hours that were created on Canvas, but then also some in-person on top of that during that day. Primarily offered during the month of August. And again, the model they used was direct instruction, application, and then reflection. And I too have looked over the discussion boards. It's amazing. And when he says hundreds of comments, that's per module. Teachers were interacting back and forth. It was amazing. And then face-to-face options, as we said, on 820. So how that data breaks down, and again, it was that 7 hours are required. 60 teachers completed 14 plus hours during that time as we push the calendar back. 60 out of 69 completed that much. So there were 69 total in there. So pretty amazing. And then as you can see, 12 were 17 or more, with some even being in the 20s. If we went back to that leaderboard, we could see the beardless koala or whoever it may have been. But just teachers, participation was great. It was phenomenal. I can say in my, this is 7 years here now. This has been one of the most amazing professional development, just time periods or opportunities we provided to staff. And as I said, finally, we're able to execute a vision that many of us have been talking about. And again, it's a credit to the staff. They created this and then participated. It was amazing. So then we took some other staff feedback. And again, this is specific to 912, this participation data. We wanted to use Canvas, the LMS, to kind of gather some of this participation feedback. Some of the things that really stuck out to me, those first two comments. So the very first one is someone who has a husband in another district that had been complaining about their PD, and she was able to brag about how awesome these opportunities were. The second one was a staff member that came to us from a different district that had been using Canvas for a while, that we were actually going to reach out to help guide some of our PD last spring. COVID hit, we weren't able to do that. This staff member came over and said the work that Mike, that our teachers put in, our tech coaches, that it was simply amazing. And then kind of the last one stuck out to me as well. Just crediting their colleagues for all the hard work they put in and the amazing opportunities they were able to provide. So. And then finally, the next step, how do we leverage this vision we had talked about for a long time that we finally had an opportunity to execute? What's the next step overall? And Dr. Webster spoke to this a little bit, but it's continuing to personalize, to be flexible with it. Just when you think of a calendar, there's usually a Teacher Institute in April that we have. Well, we go through a day of training, and as previous speakers have said, we're not always able to follow up that day. Well, the end of the year is right around the corner, so we may not even revisit that until the following year. So to get flexible with how we do things, to look at the calendar, and this year's a good example, we have June 7th as a Teacher Institute Day. Well, instead of saying we're all going to gather on June 7th, go through PD and then not see each other again until the fall, is we're going to provide ongoing. We're going to keep building that library of PD opportunities that teachers can complete throughout the course of the year. If they meet the requirement for that Teacher Institute Day, the 7 hours, then they would not have to attend that June 7th date. They would have done that throughout the year. Again, it speaks to that ongoing PD and providing opportunities throughout the year. Multiple people have said we plan to continue building this PD bank. That's for staff ongoing if they want to revisit, but also when we're onboarding staff. It makes that more seamless. And the other thing is we don't have to wait for a faculty meeting. Oftentimes we have information we want to get out there, and if it's not through email, we have to wait till we get all staff together, which can sometimes be complicated. So now if something comes across that we really want to get out there, we can upload it into Canvas or upload it into Google Classroom right away, and then just let staff know to check it out there. So, and I think Mr. Rice has something in the works there, because I was testing something out for him today, so he was using that tool.
Our faculty meeting tomorrow will actually be housed through Canvas, and we're doing a lot of our communication that way to try to, again, to bring everything just for our staff, just like our students and families. How can we give them one place to go, as opposed to I go to the Google Sites for this and Canvas for this and Infinite Campus for this. The more we can bring that together, the fewer trips they have to make, the more time they have to focus on what is really important. So yes, if there's any questions for the high school level, I'm more than happy to answer those if I can.
So those hours of professional development, because I have no idea what Canvas looks like, is there like an index being created so that if there's a particular topic that a staff member doesn't want to go back and watch 14 hours, that they'd be able to access particular, even small, minute?
Yes. So first of all, we tried to keep our videos short, so 5 to 10 minutes. I'm the worst at that, as anybody that works in my building will tell you. Not only do I talk a lot, but I also write super long emails. So it's a challenge for me. But we try to kind of compartmentalize those. So in a module within Canvas, you can basically put little snippets, little pieces. Think of it like sub-pages on a website. And so for those things, it's not an index that's created so much, but it's the way it's laid out from the get-go. If a staff member goes, it was that third part of the module on X, Y, or Z, they can go right to that part. It's not down to the minute, so YouTube now will, or if you Google search something, it'll take you right to the video. It's not that close, but it's usually within 5 to 10 minutes that they can narrow it down and figure out what they're looking for.
Awesome. it seems that this professional development is somewhat of a silver lining.
Very
from
much so.
COVID.
Yes.
And I would hope that we maintain it and continue it even after we leave this part of the pandemic.
Agree. Great. Well, thank you for your time. Have a rest.
Thank you.
Good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Open discussion and future agenda items. We have a number, actually, of items we talked about. IEPs, Canvas, some kind of demonstration of Canvas. Another program I see mentioned from time to time is Seesaw. It would be nice to see what that's like. And
Just wanted to also thank the parents for coming tonight and voicing just what is going on in their household. That can't be easy to kind of get up in public forum and voice that, and just appreciate all the emails that have come through as well. Giving the feedback, and you know, we're only one person's living our own lives, so to be able to hear about the numerous different ways that this is being absorbed is appreciated. So just thought it was worthwhile to say.
To echo that, James, I agree with you, and it hit me tonight how one-sided our meetings can be at times because we have educators speaking to us and that are part of our agenda, and I hope maybe out of that Citizens Advisory Committee, we at least strive to get a little more balance and bring our parents into the discussion and create the dialogue that somebody referenced tonight.
well said. Any other open discussion items? Issues, observations, questions, future agenda items, last call. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, or dismissal of personnel and imminent litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call?
Davy?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes. Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yep.
Wren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, we'll move to executive session, and then we'll reconvene here shortly, hopefully, to conclude the meeting.
Let the bass kick. Think about it. 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 Think about it.
Let the bass kick.
Think about it. 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 Think about it.
Visual down, radar down. What's happening? This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened. This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened. This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened.
Breakdown. Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
Kick. Think about it. 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 Think about it.
your equipment isn't properly set up, you might be missing some of the benefits that stereo can provide.
Missile down, radar down. What's happening?
All right, we're back in regular session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call?
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Wren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Dombeck?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.